This is a true story. I have witnesses. It was my son and I, another gentleman and his son, and then the 2 or 3 people in the factory. So for people who read the book, it sounds like a made-up story. That's exactly how it happened. So we toured a factory owned by an American in outside of Beijing, like way outside of Beijing. I think we drove for about 3 hours to this particular town that I should not name. And after the tour, the guy who owns the factory asked if we had any questions, and this young lady had been shadowing us. She was working her way off the floor into management. And so when he said, "Does anyone have a question?" she said, "I do," which was unusual because he was asking us if we had questions about the tour. And he said, "Sure, what's your question?" And she turns to me and she said, "Are you a pastor?" And now we're in China.
And you're in China.
Yeah,
right.
we're in China. So is this a trick question? Is it, are we on our way out?
Yeah.
Is it, hey, we need your passport? And I said, "I am." And she said, "I recognize your voice." And then she said, "How good is good enough?" Which was the name of a little book I wrote years ago. But before that, I had done a message series called How Good is Good Enough. And somehow she ended up with a CD of that sermon, put her faith in Christ, listened to it over and over and over and over, and recognized my voice. And then she said, "I have another question." She asked her boss, "Can I ask another question?" He said, "Sure." Now this is all through, well, she could speak a little bit of English.
Okay.
And her question was, "Pastor Stanley, why doesn't everybody in America go to church? Why doesn't everybody in America go to church?" And I understood the question because I had been there long enough to understand a little bit of the context. And as I asked her questions, there was no church in her community. She had to take a bus. It was part of a network church. Americans call these underground churches a non-registered church. So it was a little bit, the further away you are from Beijing, apparently the easier it is to find one of those network churches. So here's a young woman who would be at church every night if the door was open, every Sunday for sure. And when somehow she discovered that there are churches everywhere in America that are empty and that most Americans don't go to church, she just didn't have a category for that. And that question has bothered me ever since in a good way.
Because she's risking her life every single day when she goes to church.
Right, she had a hard time finding a Bible. Any kind of network of Christian friends was difficult. And then again, of course, we take it for granted. It's like anything you have too much of. You take it for granted after a while. So that kind of rattled me. Why doesn't everybody in America go to church?